So, Riven got a from the ground up remake this year, and originally I was kind of intent on letting it be, even if the prospect is something of a big deal. You all know I'm a huge fan of the works of Cyan, with Myst and Riven specifically being two formative experiences for me, and despite the multiple versions of Myst floating around out there, Riven has never been touched since its initial release. The 2018 re-release got it working on modern machines, but that's kind of where it stopped. Other than the Starry Expanse project, a fan-initiated attempt at a remake, there's been no official work to bring Riven out of its original form until now. The trailers all looked fantastic and more attractive than ever. Obviously, I was happy for the game to be accessible to a new or wider audience, and I kind of felt like that's where it could stay. A few people asked me if I was planning on doing a video on the Riven Remake, and I wasn't sure. I've said my piece on the game before, and beyond the absolutely stunning graphical upgrade the game was clearly getting, I wasn't sure that I would find something else to contribute. But then, Robyn Miller went and retweeted a clip of someone playing the demo during Steam Next Fest, and yeah, that's different. The full scope of just how different the game was going to end up being came to me when Cullen invited me to co-host his inaugural stream of the game at the end of June, wherein the both of us were just kind of giggling in surprised awe of just how much had been remixed or changed from the original, and eventually it became clear to me that this was something I had to experience for myself. Then it turned out that I needed a quick project that I could use to tide myself over while I sorted out some real life stuff before buckling down on larger projects that I have in the works, and so here we are. Let's talk about the Riven Remake. For starters, I gotta say, it's pretty cool. Pretty much everywhere you go, this version of the game presents you with something new to experience or explore. There are new elements furthering the story and situation of the game. I love the way the tears in the world are actually there now, staring back at you, reminding you of the impending fate of the world of Riven. The implications of the broken or breaking infrastructure of the islands is an amazing visual illustration of what is just implied in the original. Basically, every angle of the puzzles have been rebuilt to more fully involve the player and what they contribute to the experience. There are plenty of new devices to mess around with that go clickety-clack very satisfyingly, and new ways to explore that take advantage of your ability to fully move around and properly look at stuff. I had a lot of fun going through this reimagining of an old favorite, and I can highly recommend it to old and new players alike. It is a drastic departure from the original experience that has a lot going for it. Unlike the Myst remake from 2021, this is essentially a brand new game telling an old story. It's a totally new way to experience a classic, now in new high def or even VR. And if I'm honest, I don't know how I feel about that. I find myself at a bit of an interesting crossroads in this moment, because it's clear to me that the Riven Remake is working its magic, but I can't help but stare longingly into the gulf that separates the two games now, with questions swirling around in my mind. To me, and I have said as much on the record multiple times before, the puzzles in Riven aren't just important to the game, I think they were important to the genre. Yeah, for anyone who is familiar with the work I do on this channel, you'll know that I spend a lot of time thinking about these kinds of puzzle games and what it is they accomplish beyond just being games. I have a whole series here breaking down a selection of choice cuts of the genre, and I guess this video is a kind of appendix entry in this series, and I am going to keep this one short, I promise, because I have a whole slate of videos I'm working on right now, including a new full installment in the puzzle game series for later this year, and so if you're interested in supporting the continuing work I do here, then why not take a look at my Patreon? For as little as $3 Canadian a month, you can get access to bonus vlogs, video commentaries, and 1 week of ad-free early access to new videos before they go live here on the main channel. All of the support I get there goes to making videos like these happen, which they are happening, I promise. Like I said, I had some real life stuff come up this summer, and so I know it's been slow, but okay. Riven. One of my favorite games, and truly a game changer, at least from my perspective. Its predecessor, Myst, was the first of its kind, both for me personally and in many ways for the world at large as well. A provocative new approach to game design, and in the end, an effective brainstorming session for Riven to capitalize on. Everywhere you turn is a new mystery. The challenge is in figuring out how everything fits together, and with enough perseverance, you can find your way to the goal. In Riven, however, everything is a mystery, but finding out what the important mystery is so much of the journey. The whole point of the game is realizing that the key to completing your mission is not about understanding the machinations of a single person or mastermind and the vault that they have designed. Instead, it has you understanding a culture, the symbols they use, the land that they inhabit, as well as their struggles and worries, the designs of an oppressive, occupying influence that has other plans for how this world can be used. There's lots to see and do here, but knowing what is part of the matter at hand takes critical thinking and observation to fully understand. Check out my previous video on Riven for a spoiler-free discussion of how that can work. And it's this particular approach to the design of a puzzle game that kicked my brain into high gear in the first place. There is a minimalism to Riven that separates it from its predecessor and its successors. But what made Riven so notable in the first place was the elements of Myst's design that it specifically left behind. Myst is all about advertising that everything you come across is important and will fit into the larger picture eventually. But in Riven, everything is similarly surprising and interesting, but much of it is just there because it is there. A world content to be a world, the puzzles of the game completely melting into the environment around you to the degree that you're not even really sure what a puzzle is in this context. I would describe my experience with Riven almost like a place I was visiting that slowly unfolded before me, revealing that it was secretly a computer game all along. It's kind of a mind-bending experience, driving the idea of simply being there, taking in what you can, and learning what's important. When revelations come to you, it's not just the satisfaction of checking something off of a list, it's in learning something fundamental that you can apply from now on. This is essentially what in these games has so thoroughly captivated me over the last few years, exploring how a puzzle can be built not out of pieces that you need to fit together a certain way, but principles that can be learned and applied to each other, and how this can in turn build a world that tells a story. There's something magical about that connection. Rather than a problem solved, it's something inherited. If you were to ask me if that magic is preserved in the remake of Riven, I would have to think for a moment, because honestly, no. Not on the surface, and not in the way that I would hope. Ultimately, it got me thinking about when remake becomes reinvention. What is the comparative value between an update that preserves and a new experience grown out of something beloved? Because, like I said, the Riven Remake is different. This change-up prompted me to finally check out the Myst remake from 2021, in which the name of the game was Preservation. I wasn't even sure going in to what degree the game was faithful to the original, but having now played it myself, I would put it at probably at least 95%. It is pretty much fully intact here, only now with full 3D movement and perspective, allowing you to see the stuff that they hid from view in the classic game. I won't say that the redesign of everything necessarily works out. There is a certain level of sterility that comes with some of the smaller, more personal spaces in the game. This bookcase, for instance, lacking some wondrous detail it once had. But do not misinterpret me. The otherworldly strangeness of the environments at large is fully intact, and I would say improved in some cases. I, for one, am quite glad that the locations of the game now get to look like this, or like this. I feel like some of these environments have now fully come into their own. Even the original FMV character performances are preserved here as an optional alternative, which, aside from just appealing to my straight-up nostalgic needs in this instance, is something that I'm thankful for. Mismatched with the environments as they are, it feels weird not having Cirrus and Akinar's appearance in the books not be as unsettling as possible. I think they're great performances that really further the experience, and I just can't bring myself to use anything else. But ultimately, there is really nothing new going on in this release. It is the original puzzles packaged and preserved for old fans and new players alike. There is the option to randomize the randomizable puzzles for a bit of extra flavor, but still applying the same knowledge to the same problems in the same environments for replay value, I guess. And for the record, on this playthrough, I can now say I have figured out the maze in Selenitic. Yeah, I get it now. It's easier than I assumed. So everybody leaving comments on my old Myst video, I hear you, I'm with you. Still not my favorite part of the game, though. Playing Myst 2021 kind of highlighted something for me I hadn't really considered before. I'm a huge Myst fan, I think the game is highly valuable, I played it on repeat as a kid and frequently refer back to it to this day, and yet it took until this year for me to revisit it in any other form. I know the game pretty much inside and out already, and there are plenty of other things to do with my time and money. I never did play Real Myst or the Masterpiece Edition because what could they add to an experience which was already perfectly tuned for what I needed out of it? The original Myst, or more accurately the 2018 re-release, is what I'm looking for, the perfect hit of visual nostalgia combined with the forward-thinking attitude that made Myst what it became. I didn't even approach the remake until I decided it was a good thing to have on the checklist for this video. This was a game that I was happy was here, not for my sake, but for those who were now better able to approach this series, on new machines with an updated look. It's an appealing prospect. So what confuses me here, I guess, is the juxtaposition between these two remakes. Myst being as unerringly loyal as it is, and Riven, conversely, distractingly different, but like in some really cool ways. Like I said, my first experience with the game had me giddy with excitement, and the challenge of meeting the game on this new level was worthwhile and exciting. There are whole new layers in this game to understand, and I'm sure that if this was a wholly original title with no other connotations, I would be shouting it from the rooftops. But I am an old fan of Cyan games. What's more, I hold Riven up as one of the best examples of a game that I can think of. I was like 2 steps shy of calling it a perfect game in my video on it, and I don't bat an eye at that idea today. And now, this version presents a loose nail for me to get scraped on here. So at this point, I just have to get it out of my system. I don't think that this remake carries the same magic as the original. It is no longer about that mystifying mundanity that comes to mean everything which I celebrated so much the first time around. It's not a game about bridging the gap between the kinds of things you would learn in school if you were a child growing up here, and the complex sciences found beyond the boundaries of our or even this fictional reality anymore. It still approaches and indulges both of these topics, but it is a lot closer to that individual and the vault that they designed, which is fine. Everyone loves a good mystery, myself included. The game is sending you down the same roads, the same story, it wants you to see this world and understand it. The message of the puzzles is still here, but the spirit of them, what they come to mean in the long run, comes from somewhere completely different now. Devices that require deciphering, new locations expanding the nature of the world, a specialized tool that replaces a lot of the player intuition featured in the first game, and some solutions that kind of strain credulity. Yeah, here I am, old man yells at clouding a very good game. I understand that this is what I am doing here, and please don't get me wrong, I like this game very much. I think it is a good puzzle game that you should all play. I'm just trying to figure out how to talk about a game that I enjoyed that also happens to be specifically pulling away from what I feel made it special or even important in the first place. I'm not sure I've ever had to navigate that before. I keep asking myself, what do we lose when remake becomes reinvention? The magic of memory, I guess? The idea of other people walking the same road I did? Yeah, when I say it out loud, that's a weird thing to fixate on. I'm already at a point where I can never truly recreate the experience of playing Riven again for the first time. The best I can hope for is to encourage others to take that journey, and then to witness them learning and being amazed in the same way that I was. The number of times I've co-hosted someone else through Outer Wilds on stream for just this reason is always going to be more than the number of times I got to play it for myself. I love these games, but at this point, what is the difference between mourning the idea of not being able to play them again, or the idea that I've played them at all? Should I be pining for something that has already passed me by like this so long ago now? The old magic may not be here anymore, but I fully understand that there is a new magic at play that I am probably poorly positioned to fully intuit. This is something that I need to recognize because there is precedent for it here within my own channel, whether I like it or not. Because I remembered something else that happened the week of Riven's release that, when I stopped and thought about it, had a larger bearing on this discussion my brain was having with me than I initially thought. Good Old Games announced its intention to preserve the original Resident Evils 1, 2, and 3 on its digital storefront, with the first releasing the day of the announcement. The original versions of a franchise rife with remakes that make sweeping changes in the process were going to be maintained for modern audiences. This act of preservation, welcome as it is, seems innocuous enough on its face, but when you take into account how much the 2002 Resident Evil remake for the GameCube, another example of a remake taking wild departures from the original source material, has figured into my development as a player of games, it kind of becomes a big deal. I can't hope to keep proper track of the number of times I've cited or referenced it on this very channel. I can't hope to account for how many times I've finished or even just started the game in my life, really. And yet, I, surprising even myself, have never actually gotten around to playing the original Resident Evil. I haven't experienced them firsthand, but I am aware of the differences between the two, and I fully believe that there are moments in this remake that we would be poorer for not having. I'm glad we got the new game that we got. To me, this is the first Resident Evil game, but I should probably acknowledge that if I had been an OG fan of the OG game, I might have had problems with this thing that I love now. In some other universe, I am probably that fan who prefers the camp appeal of the bad voice acting and the strange tone created by the low-fidelity graphics and original character models. I would be frankly astounded if there wasn't a piece of the RE fanbase that does feel this way right now, even if it's just for nostalgia's sake. Heck, there's even a whole slew of FMV cutscenes from the original game not preserved in the remake here, something that should sound kind of familiar from early in this very video. And yet, I have to confess, even with the wild change-ups from the original, even with the affronts to preservation put forward by this game, Resident Evil Remake is a longtime favorite game and a formative experience for me. So, why not Riven? Like I said, I love this new look at the game. I think it's pretty amazing how they worked to rebuild the experience for a new and more involved audience. Part of the effect of the original Riven, what made it so strong, was how little it specifically demanded of the player, which I will be the first to admit doesn't necessarily keep a wide audience hooked. It's a lot of wandering around, wondering if what you're doing is even leading to something. Even I recognize that. So much of what has been added gets the player deliberately involved, working and doing and figuring. Every step of the way, I was delighted because all of these changes read to me as something that a new audience can approach more easily. I've gotten used to hearing people call these games inaccessible, impenetrable, or needlessly obtuse, and this remake made me excited for all of the new people who could ostensibly join me here. There may be aspects of the original that I will miss forever, but, I mean, you don't rebuild a world into looking like this without taking the opportunity to shine a new light on it, to take advantage of the ability to look around and search with purpose. I fully understand why this remake was done in the way that it was, and when I realized how much was changed, I kind of salivated at the idea of playing Riven for the first time again. I'm so excited for every first-time player who will pick up this remake and fall in love with it, even if I kind of feel like they will be missing out on something. Riven is, and I'm using this word again, foundational to me. and that's why I put so much value in the original game specifically. Riven is a key piece of the construct under which I appreciate and consider games a part of my life. In this moment, it's kind of weird to think about how different my life and outlook would have been if I had played the Riven Remake first, specifically because of how much it doesn't indulge the kind of thinking I learned from the original. And I get that I overthink these kinds of things. It's 70% of the reason I'm still maintaining this channel. Obviously, not everyone is going to get what I got out of this game decades later, and this remake really is a great chance for people to find their own takeaway and meaningful engagement with the material. And of course, it's worth considering, a faithful preservation of the original experience resulted in an afterthought for me, while the unfamiliar shuffling of a classic quickly turned into a purchase, a game that I devoured within days. Putting aside the sales implications for a moment, it occurs to me that a remake like this is for everyone, even if some of us are going to have to adjust our attitudes. And so, this whole time I've been wondering, what do we lose when remake becomes reinvention? But maybe I should turn it around. What do we gain when remake becomes reinvention? That feels like the richer question. I walked into writing this video thinking I was going to find some deeper unifying theory that connected these games beyond just a title and a story. That didn't happen. What I found instead was imaginative new twists, creative problems to solve, and a desire to make this story known. The more I thought about it, the more I was able to picture new and old players alike joining together in this moment and getting excited about something new. That's a great thing. Any barrier to entry is all but removed for at least a little while. No one knows what to expect, and the story can, in a way, continue. I think I'm able to be as excited for a new game to commune with people over as I am for people to discover my old favorite games in the way that I did. From that perspective, I think I'm okay to let Riven be two separate games, and that's what I'm going to choose to be excited about. Yeah, can you believe it? There's 2 Rivens out there now, everybody, and they're both great. What more could I ask for?
And now I am at rest, understanding that in books and ages and life, the ending can never truly be written.